You are listening to If These Woods Could Talk, produced by the Rhinelander District Library. Now follow us on YouTube as well as Facebook and Instagram for new episodes, other history blurbs, and civil discussion. If these woods could talk, they might tell you about a spider so big it made Jaws look like a goldfish. I went up to the Superior Coast to talk with legendary Wisconsin filmmaker Bill Rebane about his life-making independent science fiction movies in northern Wisconsin, his film studio, and what he fondly, or not, refers to as the giant spider disaster. I wanted to include my own Bill Rebane story before we continue. I'd seen the giant spider invasion, and talking with Mr. Rebane on the phone, he was very friendly. But I had no idea what sort of conversation I was in for. So Bill lets me into his house and starts leading me to the office where we're going to sit and talk. Immediately I'm greeted by a meow. So I bend down and offer my hand to the origin of the noise. And the cat immediately brushed up against my hand and arm, so I'm instantly charmed. I kneel down and pet the cat and I ask Bill, "Well, now who's this?" Bill turned to me and said, "That's a cat," and then he continued walking to his office. He's definitely an interesting guy, and he will be in Rhinelander this Friday, May 16th, 2025, for a showing of his film, Attack of the Hodag, as well as a Q&A. Could you tell me your name and who you are?
Oh, Bill Rebane. I used to have what they call the one and only full-time feature film studio in the Midwest, which was located in Gleason, not far from Rhinelander. That was a full-service feature film, motion picture studio. We did have some amenities like a supper club, bar and restaurant, recording studio and sound stages, and with all the bells and whistles.
And did you build that?
Yeah, we built that ourselves.
The shooting ranch, was it?
We made 11 feature films there, including the giant spider invasion, of course.
Of course. Well, speaking of Rhinelander, some of the giant spider invasion was also shot in Rhinelander.
Yep, at Nicolay College.
Yep.
And Capture Bigfoot was shot in your town hall.
Really? Okay.
And the DNR station in Rhinelander.
Okay.
Yeah, we used all of the surrounding areas as much as we could to keep it. It was always meant to be Wisconsin locations, Wisconsin films. An in thing, you know. Beer, cheese, and movies from
There we
Wisconsin.
go. Okay. So if we can step back and just kind of start from the start, where do you start?
Oh, I started in Chicago in the late 50s and early in the 60s. I came to Wisconsin. I bought a farm in Gleason in 1965 or 64, and very slowly turned that into a motion picture facility, very slowly, because I was making mostly commercials, industrial films, corporate image films, and documentaries, which was my source of living. So but I didn't didn't like Chicago anymore because my kids, I had 2 kids by that time. I wanted them to grow up in the country, and I loved the North Woods.
Okay.
The outdoors, the fishing, and the perfect place for growth. And then I started making feature films there. And that started the growth of the studio.
How long was that your goal?
It wasn't my goal until I moved there, and I traveled all over the country doing commercial productions, documentaries. But I always brought my post-production work back to the ranch, and I had to set up a editing facility in my basement, which used to be a chicken coop. But it was easier for me to, after all the traveling, to come home and do the editing, which took a lot of time and work. Mm-hmm. So I slowly started growing that into a more full-fledged production facility.
Historically, are you a big reader? I'm just wondering, I guess, where your science fiction background comes from.
Oh, I like to read. I read a lot, and whenever I get into a project, of course, you have to do a lot of research. Mm-hmm. So I was the historical executive director for the Iron County Historical Society for 2 years here. So I was working on a lot of historical stuff in Iron County. But yeah, I do a lot of reading and research the projects before embarking on them.
Okay, so you've got a couple kids. We move up to Gleason, and believe so. Your first film was which one was that? Monster or Go-Go was number 1.
Oh, that was Chicago.
That was in Chicago.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, and before that was Twist Craze.
So the first thing to come out of Gleason then?
First thing out of Gleason was the Lincoln. I did a promotional film for Lincoln County. Okay. Called "There Must Be a Better Way." That, of course, was for the promotion of Lincoln County.
Yeah.
And then the first feature was The Selected, later known as Invasion from Inner Earth, which is was still on some streaming channels. What have you.
Okay. How does that happen? How does the title change like that?
Well, when it goes into distribution, the distributors might want a more exploitable, catchable title.
Sure.
The Selected was our working title, and it premiered in Wausau, Wisconsin, as The Selected. It was the first full feature film done in Wisconsin ever, with all Wisconsin crew and cast. It was the first effort of a feature film, complete feature film done in the state of Wisconsin. And had more than a reasonable success. That still playing in Europe and other countries, so I hope they like the scenery. It was a winter movie, and the scenery was breathtaking.
Yeah.
So the foreign visitors might enjoy that, and have enjoyed it. And then, of course, came after that, came the giant spider invasion, which, of course, actually put Wisconsin on the map worldwide for 50 years. And by the way, this is the 50th anniversary.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Of spiders. And we're going to have a special cut with the director's narrative coming out for Midsummer.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that really was the most successful. It made over. Hold on a second.
Yep.
Can't do that right now. Can't do that right now. It grossed the international gross. But it was one of the 50 top grossing films of '75, and it grossed over 150, 200 million internationally.
Okay.
So a major success. A major success for an independently made motion picture.
Sure. So, when was the premiere of that? What time of year?
There was it opened in Oklahoma and in Dallas, Oklahoma City, and Dallas in August, September. I'm sorry, October. It was October '75, and it was on the Johnny Carson. I found out what it was doing from the Johnny Carson show. He said, "Would you believe there's a little movie made in Wisconsin for $300,000 already made $24 million?"
No, not really. Hard to believe. That's something.
That's how I found out about it. I didn't know. The distributors are always cheat, you know.
Sure.
Well, this particular distributor, after the opening, bought a $4 million mansion in Hollywood Hills. So,
Well, good for him.
yeah, we kept wondering where our share is. That's the movie business.
Yeah, that's show business. So was that pretty much self-funded? Did you have producers on the?
Yeah, and Spider, the producer, was William Dyke, who was the former mayor of Madison
Okay.
and a lawyer. And it was a tax shelter deal in those days. The laws have changed for financing,
Sure.
but they had a break for movie investors because they could write off. If there was no big profit, the investors could write off 3 or 4 times the amount they invested on their tax forms.
Sure.
So they got a big benefit from it,
Yeah, encourage
and the
people to.
distributor took all the money. So the investors were happy because they could write off, 3 or 4 times their investment. And that works for the businessman.
So was that something of a wake-up call? Did it change how you worked going forward?
Absolutely. I got wise to the distribution tricks pretty fast. I started my own distribution company, started going to the world markets and starting to sell foreign rights before I even entertained going into distribution theatrically in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So we made some money back on the other features already in foreign sales before we got it out into the. But I was very lucky. The next movie, The Alpha Incident, was picked up by Paramount Pictures and was a co-feature to Star Wars, which did pretty well.
Which Star Wars? The first.
The first one, yeah.
Wow.
The Alpha Incident, that was not an exploitation picture. It was a drama, a science fiction drama. But I think it was way ahead of its time because it dealt with a germ from Mars being brought to Earth, and it was a cover-up, government cover-up. it would have fit better during the recent epidemic of COVID. It was way ahead of its time.
Sure. When you're working in speculative fiction, whether it's sci-fi or fantasy or whatever, where do these ideas come from for you?
Well, usually come from if there's something in the media that is hot. If you can draw from what is in the news and presently hot, like right now it's politics,
Right.
In those days, in the early days, when the first astronaut went up, there was big, got big notoriety in the press. That's how Monster Go-Go was created, but it wasn't Monster Go-Go when I started it. It was Terror at Half Day, the original title. I don't know if you studied some of this stuff.
Wow.
But in other words, you got to know where the market is, and if there's a market out there for what you're creating.
Okay.
I don't know where the stories come from. They just pop up. And the more you think about it, the more you brainstorm, the more cohesive it gets, and then it's a matter of sitting down and being creative. It's like writing a book, really.
Sure.
On a particular subject.
You work with writing partners, or pretty much you knock it out?
No, I bounce things. I used to bounce some things off of my wife.
Okay.
Or a writing partner, like you said. Yeah, there. Quite often it takes two people to develop an idea and kick it back and forth and say, is it viable? Does it make sense? Is it story-driven? The only thing I can say about the pictures we made is they were low budget, but they were always story and character-driven. Some young filmmakers today just want to show a lot of blood and guts and sex and drugs and base the things on things that without substance or foundation.
Okay.
So luckily I had learned from the old golden days of Hollywood. I like character, story-driven material. And even with the pictures we made, they were, call them science fiction horror. I don't like the horror part too much. But they were story and character driven. Mm-hmm. And I always did the campaign first. If the campaign told a story and was exciting and acceptable to the buyers, especially in foreign countries, like I'm doing one right now, something that I'm planning to do this summer. Melanie, I don't know if you can see the poster up there.
I recognize that building.
Yeah, that's my church I own in Gleason. I always start with a campaign, with the poster.
Okay.
The campaign art, because that should tell just a little bit of the story of what kind of a movie it is. So what's this event on the 16th, is it? Or the 15th or 16th?
16th or 17th? Yeah, 16th maybe. It's called the Hodag Heritage Festival.
Where does it take place?
At Pioneer Park. That Hodag movie had some footage from there.
Is that where the caboose is?
Yeah, yep.
I know the area well. Are you familiar with the book?
No.
That's out on this Giant Spider Vision. Unfortunately, I only have some house copies left because too damn expensive to print.
Well, this is awesome.
That tells the whole story. Unfortunately, I can't give you one.
Okay.
'Cause I'm trying to find out if I can get them printed in smaller size. That kind of tells the whole story of the production and a little bit of the studio and complex.
Would you tell me some of what's in here?
Well, it basically tells the whole painful stories of the giant spider disaster, as I call it, and the history of the studio.
Can we talk about that a little bit?
What's that?
The giant spider disaster?
Well, the giant spider invasion. I call it the giant spider disaster because I shot it mostly without a screenplay, without a script, off the cuff. The two writers were fighting each other. Couldn't get together, Robert Easton and Richard Huff and Madison. But if it wouldn't have had the tongue-in-cheek camp comedy in it, it would have never become a cult classic. So that was Robert Easton's idea, and he and I worked on it on a daily basis. And I would get 2 or 3 pages a day, but I never knew where in the heck to lead it to in the end. So we kind of shot it off the cuff. And we're praying that we would have a giant spider because I promised the distributor a giant spider. But when I promised him, I had no clue of how we were going to make one.
Yeah.
And my special effects guy from Chicago, a friend of mine, looked at a Volkswagen that was parked in the lot at the studio, and he asked me if that still runs. And I said, sure does. And he had an idea how to convert that into a giant spider. That's what happened. And we had 7 kids, 6 or 7 kids inside the spider working the legs.
Each with okay.
With the springs, and then it was 100 degrees, 96, 100 degrees outside. We were always worried that we're gonna have some casualties because it was fur covered and it was hot inside. Those kids were sweating and working those legs and arms.
So who made it then? Who put the fur on Volkswagen?
Actually, my daughter and her girlfriends and schoolmates from high school.
Really?
Yeah.
They put that together.
Yeah.
Do you know what it's?
We didn't have a budget for that thing. We had a $10,000 budget for special effects. That was just in labor of welding the big spider together.
What's it made out of? Aside from the
conduit.
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 So there's a couple of scenes that involve the spider swallowing someone. How do we do that?
Oh, that was the man-eating spider. That one is still down in Merrill.
Oh, that's in Merrill. Okay.
Yeah, we had to lift that up at the crane and we had a tall and strong sound man, local farm kid. He was also the sound man. And we had 2 people in the spider, and it was lifted up by a crane. And one worked the fangs, and the other one worked on the rope, pulling up the body.
Sure.
Hooked up in a harness. And then, we had a 3rd one in there, pouring the blood out.
Okay.
Caro syrup.
Sure.
Yeah, it was a gooey mess, too.
So like I said, I'm not a filmmaker. I don't really know what goes on in any part. To me, when I see practical effects in movies, it looks like so much fun to me. But
Wow.
Is that your feeling, or is it more of a frustration?
Well, it's frustrating to make sure that it looks reasonably real. I mean, in Selected, I made the flying saucer out of paper plates,
Okay.
painted them silver, put some holes in them, and then strung a fish line from one pole to the house, and had somebody climb up on the ladder and put the whole thing on a fish line that would just slide down the fish line. I would shoot it, and it looked fairly real.
Mm-hmm.
Manual special effects.
Is that a lost art?
Hmm?
Is that a lost art? Manual special effects?
I think so, yeah. Everybody is today in the digital world. They gave the young filmmakers today too many options, and they want to play with all these little options, and they things up, and they get hooked on them, and then they overdo too much. That's why and the simplest thing to do is always make a monster movie or something bloody, a lot of blood, guts, and sex.
Yeah.
And that's the end for the newbie, instead of sitting down and writing a good story, starting with a good story. I don't know if they even write a script today.
Yeah.
It's to me, it's not kosher. We're planning a remake of the giant spider invasion,
Okay.
and we're going to have to put at least 2 big-name stars, and they're going to have to be older-known faces because the new ones, I don't know the new ones, so I don't even know how to cast.
Right.
There's still a few names around from the golden era, but hopefully we can capture a couple of them.
Would you still shoot that around here?
Oh, absolutely. I would insist that we do the remake right in the Gleason. Back to Rhinelander, yeah. Come right back to Nicolay College and just change the actors and put Jeff Bloom.
That would be cool. Everyone likes that guy.
That would be... I had it written down here. I had in mind. Jeffrey Goldblum.
Jeff Goldblum, yeah.
And we're looking at another guy that is hilarious. I gotta find my notes. Who the hell is this? Well, that Jeff Goldblum, Woody Harrelson
Okay.
as Kester, Randy Quaid, Dennis Quaid.
Okay.
Dennis played Reagan, right?
Yep.
Yeah. He would be wonderful.
He's good. All 3 of them are great.
But Jeff Goldblum was Dr. Langer in
Okay.
the laboratory at Nicolay College.
Yep.
And Alan Hale's granddaughter is very nice looking, and she's a comedian. She likes science fiction pictures. So we replaced the sheriff with a female sheriff. His
Okay.
granddaughter, that would be funny. And she's a comedian.
Is her name Hale too?
Yeah,
Oh, cool.
Samantha Hale.
Okay.
I mean, that would be kind of cool.
Yep.
And then add a lot of production. And the main thing is to have a real spider. That a really scary digital. Now there's where digital innovation comes into play. Have a real scary 28-foot spider. And then give a reason why the governor should call out the National Guards and get some production scenes. Things are different today because today, if you invite 100 townspeople or 200 people to be extras and run down the street, one of them gets hurt falling down, you're in a lawsuit. So you can't do that anymore.
I did want to ask you about the baseball scene, because that must have been difficult to coordinate, huh?
That was the easiest one.
Was it really?
Because we had the kids, we had the crowd, and we kind of surprised them. We lined everything up beforehand, and then gave them the word to start the spider going, and it was almost natural.
Okay.
I'm not so sure if the kids knew that there was going to be a real spider. That's why they were so great. They really screamed and ran.
Yeah. We should also, I should ask about another one of your movies, The Game. Was that filmed inside the Northern Air or just the external shots?
Everything was filmed there.
Okay.
That was one of the most inexpensive ones, the smallest crew, and I think we shot it in 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
It was just a fun job, and a brain fart from my lawyer partner and me to do that. It was so much fun to do, and that's why I had a crew of 5 people in the cast.
Relatively small cast.
Yeah, and people all I knew and had confidence in.
Yeah.
We kind of winged it too on that one. I think that was probably the most fun and the fastest thing we shot. What is going on here? Spam, spam, spam.
Any final words occur to you? Anything that's worth saying about, I guess, the Northwoods and filmmaking?
I think the only thing I can tell you is that I've always loved Wisconsin ever since I came here. Promoted Wisconsin. Doing all of my Wisconsin life, and will continue to do that. I'm really proud of the state. And if I wasn't as old as I am, I'd probably run for governor again.
Thanks for listening to If These Woods Could Talk. A reminder that Mr. Rebane will be in Rhinelander this Friday for a special Hodag Heritage Fest showing of Attack of the Hodag from 6 p.m. to 7:30 on Brown Street.